Hey, all. My name is Matt Grady. I'm a UBC Sala alum. I've been active at the school in various ways over the past years, and I'm currently the design principal for HDR for the West Coast offices, and I'm based here in Vancouver. Ironically, I have a bad case of vertigo and serious fear of heights, which is interesting. This is me trying to keep it cool in the cantilevered glass boxes of the ledge on the 103rd floor of the Willis Tower in Chicago. Um, I have spent my life living, studying, and practicing between North America and Europe. I had recently returned to Vancouver after many years of living in Paris, where I was lucky enough to work with a number of firms such as Jean Nouvel and Morphosis and Diamond Schmidt, among others, and have had the privilege of working on a number of fairly ambitious tower projects in different um, contexts and climates across the world, in Europe, North America, Middle East, Asia, and some of those towers are shown here. Um, these towers, unfortunately, I wasn't involved with, but they might be good places to start to talk about the tower typology and the underpinnings of the studio. On the left, the Tower of Babel, and on the right, the super tall skyscraper, the Burj Khalifa. Two interesting representations on either end of the scale of how towers have been part of the definition of our cities and sort of the uh, interesting points of our imagination and collective consciousness. The idea of stacking high has been an integral part of the architectural vocabulary for since for a long time. The idea of verticalizing and repeating landscapes, as you see in the advertisement for the high-rise living from the turn of the century on the left, and the promise of efficiency and modernity and machine living in the inserted plugs of Le Corbusier on the right, um, have witnessed sort of the hopes of where Corb thought the Ville Radieuse would take us, where, on the left, where there's a complete erasing of sight to the benefit of towers in the park, repeated across the landscape, and the evolution of that into cities, as Rem Koolhaas so accurately described and illustrated here on the right, in Delirious New York, where towers are becoming more and more solipsistic and sculptural and individualistic. Um, Today, with the increasing densification of the population and the urbanization that is happening, um, there's a growing need to densify intelligently. 2009 saw the tipping point of more than 50% of the world's population living in urban environments, and the number is just growing each day. Towers have been both the ubiquitous marker of this densification, but also the tool to deal with it. Uh, the tower typology has really seldomly departed from its uniformly similar orthodoxy over the decades, despite significant progress in science of building technologies, systems, strategies. Towers continue to be designed and built in prescribed and conventional ways. They use standard strategies and systems, and no consideration of the site's unique conditions and contextual cues. And perhaps more worryingly, many of these towers are woefully underperforming energetically, materially, and programmatically, and too many of them have components that are reaching the end of their natural life cycle. So, what do we do with these behemoths in the middle of the city? Globally, approximately 40% of the world's waste results from the construction and demolition in the building industry. 40 to 50% of resources extracted for global materials are used for construction and infrastructure projects. And in the future, this is only going to go up. Global consumption of materials is expected to rise by 56% by 2060. And of course, GHG emissions will increase at pace with this material use. So it's clear that the cycle of constant obliteration of what's old for the wholesale replacement of what's new is detrimental, breaks the continuity of our city's memory, heritage, and character, and there's obviously a need and desire to improve our built condition, but doesn't necessarily mean that we should be starting from scratch endlessly, forgetting where we came from, ignoring the value of what we have, and sustaining this punishing cycle of demolition and construction if we're to maintain a healthy future. Um, excuse me. So this studio aims to expose students to the very real and specific set of parameters, constraints, and opportunities inherent in the tower typology, but instead of designing from scratch, um, the studio is going to consider an existing tower in order to critically explore ways in which this existing tower can be manipulated, modified, mutated, and thought through to imagine a tower that is more responsive, reactive, and adapted to its surrounding context. Um, the studio will encourage students to explore ways in which interventions to an existing tower can better tune the building to the environmental forces, not only to control and defend against them, but also to harness and channel them towards positively benefiting the building and its inhabitants and the city at large. And students will be encouraged to think about how a tower might respond more meaningfully and more directly to the characteristics of its immediate context and improve on the inadequacies of the tower's original design that might have been left behind by the changing nature of the city and context around it. And special attention will be paid to ways in which the tower, as opposed to trying to be this fixed and solipsistic and solitary entity in the city, can be manipulated to become more of an intimately connected, richly programmed vertical extension of the city, and can intelligently respond to the evolving nature of the use patterns of its citizens in a more sort of holistic and connected way. So the studio structure will run in three modules. The first 3 weeks will be about tower-ness, understanding towers, and the studio will read, review writings, as well as study notable precedent tower projects to expose students to the specific characteristics of this unique typology. Excuse me. The phase will be punctuated by critically minded visits of specific towers in Vancouver, as well as talks by practitioners and specialists in this discipline. And in parallel, the studio will immediately confront the building that we will consider for the rest of the term, namely the Guinness Tower, which I'll talk about in a second. And the studio will collectively study, assemble, produce all the essential background information to understand it. And that will include a large scale model to really understand the scale and significance of this structure. The second phase of the studio and for the following 2 weeks will immerse the students in this idea of adaptive reuseness or adaptation in general, and we'll be reviewing and reading and reviewing writings on this idea of how to intervene to existing conditions. And the studio will also study a series of emblematic adaptive reuse projects and intervention focused projects to explore the breadth of ways of engaging with an existing condition and possible ways forward for the studio and the tower. And the final 8 weeks of the studio will comprise the third phase, where students will develop a project in depth at various scales and engage with the Guinness Tower that you can see in these images here in the downtown core of Vancouver. Um, Students will develop a design that adaptively integrates a series of new programs and new um, performance criteria for the tower, specifically tailoring the interventions to the essential qualities of the building, site, and context. And students will be given the choice of working either individually or as part of a group. So the tower itself as an adaptation of the future of the city is something that I'm very excited about, and I'm looking forward to the studio. So, um, thank you for listening.